Welcome to the Topwater Podcast. My name's Justin Ellis, and I'm just going to come out with it. This last weekend wasn't the greatest weekend of fishing, at least for the first day. It really it got better as the weekend went on, but it was one of those weekends to where it was nice, it was calm. Honestly, it was a perfect day on the water. It was actually a really perfect day to be there. But for some reason, I just couldn't connect. I just couldn't get bites. Maybe I was, and really thinking about it, which I will get into later, is I should have really just kind of understood that they're in this wintertime pattern. And the way I'm fishing is just a little bit too fast. I need to slow down. I need to be a little bit more patient. I need to really just kind of soak in one spot at a time. And especially being someone who is fishing from a kayak, you would think that you would be forced to slow down. And you would be forced to fish spot after spot. You know, you're not just going to keep just running through stuff. But you really can. You really can. You can just take as little time as you want on a kayak and just run through an area real quick and then just keep going. And not even just slow down and fish. Which, right now, with it being winter, and winter is kind of it's almost not the right term, because like we're having 50, 60 degree weather. I mean, right now, when I was a kid, it was steady, like 40s, low 40s, and just 30s, freezing. We would get snow a lot. And now we're getting really mild weather. But so winter time, but they're still in a winter time pattern. The water temperature's still pretty cold, you know? And I think that's something that is something that I really just kind of need to be able to recognize, is that these fish are really lethargic at this point. So the best thing I can do is just to slow down, just to be more patient. And I didn't have much time Saturday, because Saturday, I ended up spending a lot of time trying to figure out. I was buying stuff for winter time fishing, and over the weekend, I ended up spending $130 on fishing supplies. And it was probably just, and the only thing that I was catching fish on was, one type of lure, and it was on a different lake than Stockton Lake, which Stockton Lake is the lake that right now I'm trying to currently figure out. And I went out there Saturday with all this gear. I mean, we're talking like I bought drop shot stuff with, robo worms. I bought what I needed. I bought the line that I needed. I bought a nice clear, cold pommel, some fluorocarbon is essentially the mixture shit. But copolymer, that's what I was trying to say. The copolymer stuff, and I use that as leader material. I mean, I didn't like it onto my reel because it's too stiff, and it would pop off my reel very, very easily. I tried to use a halfway long leader onto my spinning setup, and it ended up just popping off of it. And it's not very good for that, but it is very good for leader material. because it lasts because I was catching some fish Sunday on it, because the reason why I went to Springfield Lake on Sunday instead of just going out to Stockton Lake was, just kind of to save a little bit of money, but also at the same time, I haven't fished Springfield Lake in the wintertime. I haven't really kind of clued in on to their patterns. And Sunday, I actually do believe I figured out the pattern there. And it's just basically the same pattern as I was running from, summertime all the way through. Swim bait with a underspin. That's pretty much it. I mean, other than a topwater, swim bait with a underspin, And, I mean, I was throwing other things. I was throwing a big glide bait. I mean, it was a Bass Pro brand glide bait, so it's not top of the line. But, I mean, it has good action. It stays upright. It doesn't tip over. Sometimes if you give it a little bit of a little reel twitch, it will kind of kick out a little bit, but it's not bad. I've had bass follow it for sure to be interested. I've had a peck or two. I've never caught a bass off of it. And one of these days I will catch a bass off of it. And I'm hoping that it's something substantial, but also at the same time, I just kind of want to break it in. It is a $10, I think it was like a $10, $11 bait, and I would like to at least catch one fish off of it. That's the gratification enough, is to just catch one fish off of a halfway expensive bait. Just one. That's all I want, Because, I mean, I've caught fish off of inexpensive baits, You want to think that when you spend the money, that you're spending the money in the right place. And in a way, this was kind of a whim thing that I bought just because I do know where I do fish. There's a shad population that does get to that size, to where they get relatively big. And I've seen them. I've seen them in schools. And it's a phenomenal thing. Not going to lie. Seeing a big school of big shad, wow. That's a bass's dream right there. I mean, they'd be choking those dudes, especially a big bass or a huge catfish, like a flathead. Oh, flathead would just start murking those dudes. They would just eat them all. Just yum, 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 yum. That's what they would do. They would just eat them up. But when I was out at Stockton Lake, I think Stockton Lake was really, because I went out there to really answer some questions, and I didn't get the questions I didn't answer any questions. I didn't answer anything. I didn't figure out maybe that if I caught one fish off of one bait, that it would be at least a clue. It could be at least a clue in the right direction of something that I was doing, but it wasn't. I didn't catch any fish. So therein lies, it adds more questions to what I'm doing. So am I doing the right thing? Not only that, am I going the right speed? Am I fishing the right area? Maybe I'm just in an area just that the fish I'm finding on my graph might not be bass. They may be carp. They could be catfish. They could be something completely different. I would assume they're bass, but at the same time, I know that there's deeper areas into the lake, and there's also places that are further downstream. And I am not a wildlife biologist. I am not a bass expert. I am an amateur person. If I could, I hope I'm just normal. But at the same time, I am trying to figure these bass out. It's in a way almost like a game, but I don't want to put it like it's a game, because this is a real skill, and these are real skills that you have to put hard work and hard time and develop over a long duration of time. And you really have to put in the techniques and put in the work. And it's hard. It has been a grind. And so far, it's Saturday was a bit of a grind. It was a lot of chucking and winding. And from what I can think of is that I'm just going too fast. See, I'm finding some bait balls off of these points, and I figure that I should drop a underspin or, like a jig, and I wasn't catching anything. I even threw a drop shot out there and tried a drop shot, but I think I didn't take enough time. I think 1, 2, 3 casts isn't going to be enough. And I think I didn't take enough time, and I tried to move from spot to spot because I felt pressured to move from spot to spot. The reason why I felt pressured because I had a very limited window of time, because I don't have lights on my kayak, and this is a area that does get boat travel. Yes, my English isn't the best. I mess up from time to time. But even though I was born, which is funny, I was born in America and my English isn't the best. I was born in Missouri. I'm like as white as it comes, and my English isn't the best. It's amazing. I love it. But back to the subject is I was fishing too fast. And I think I need to just slow down. Even if I only have time to fish one spot, I need to pick that spot and understand that the reason why I picked that spot was because I think that at this temperature that that area would hold not only bait fish, and I was finding fish. It's not like I wasn't finding fish. I was finding fish on the graph, but I don't think that those were the right species. They could have been the right species. They very well could have, but I wonder if maybe I went a little bit further up the creek. If I went further up lake, it also might be a little bit warmer. I would assume that the warmer water is just going to flow downwards with the current. So I think, especially since we haven't had a whole lot of rain or snow or anything like that, that it shouldn't cool off the water towards the middle of the lake. So I think there's a couple of different factors. There's a couple of different factors that I'm trying to take into an account, but I haven't had enough time to really get on to a pattern. And this is just one of the creek arms. There's another bigger one that is to the northeast of where I'm fishing. But, it just kind of like breaks out. And there's another creek arm that attaches into the one that I'm fishing currently. So, there's plenty of lake for a kayak to fish. And it gets pretty deep. 50, 60, pretty deep. So as far as fishing in a kayak, and from what I understand, this lake can kind of get pretty rough. There's not a whole lot of pockets. There's not a whole lot of protection. I mean, there is a little bit, but, in a kayak, may not be the best lake to fish. But I'm still dedicated to figuring out where the fish are, what's happening, and, just getting out there and figuring them out. And I have to stay on the grind. I have to. But also, I wouldn't say necessarily falter, but I went back to my old lake, and the reason why I did that is because I wanted to break in my new rod. But also, the last time I went there, I didn't catch any fish. So, it was almost like going back there and redeeming myself, because this was the lake that I was just killing it at. This was the lake that I was just putting in work, and I was just messing everything. I was jacking them up. I was at least catching decent fish. I wouldn't say I was jacking them up, because it was a really high. It's all relative, because this is a very pressured lake. So to catch 5 fish out of a very, very pressured lake, to where I've had times, you're talking like this is a 300 and I think 18-acre lake, Lake Springfield. It's not a very big lake, and there are a lot of fishermen out on it. There was at least one time a stretch of bank, which was the south side stretch of bank, the only south side stretch of bank, and there was 3 people in front of me that were fishing this, and then me, and then 2 dudes behind me that were all just simultaneously fishing this bank. And for one person, it would be a normal stretch of bank. For all those, what was it? 5? For 5 people at one time down a stretch of bank? No, these fish are getting pressure. These fish do not bite. Like you have to really know, you have to really dial your technique in order to get the bite. And even then, I still think to myself, how long until they figure this out? How long until they figure out what I'm throwing? Eventually, you're just like, I wonder, how long until these bass get acclimated to fishing lures? Because good luck catching these bass. Like you catch 3. I caught, let's see, the last time I was there, like Sunday, I caught 4 bass, I think. Yeah, caught 4 bass. Biggest one being 16 inches. I didn't have a scale. Last one actually was the fattest one, but I got 3 of them. Yeah, I got 3 of them. Actually, no, I got all of them. I got all of them on my new rod. I lost 2. I would have had a really good day. Like that would have been, and actually now thinking about that, I would actually have one of the best days of fishing out there if I hadn't have lost those 2 fish. And losing those 2 fish were 100% my fault. 100%. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's say this, because it is 100% my fault. Because one of them was my jig rod, which, with it getting colder, I thought, hey, let's put on a leader. So I put on a leader onto it, but, it's only a 12-pound leader, and this is a pretty heavy-duty rod. So I backed off my drag a little bit. I backed it off a little bit too much. And I felt the little... And, I mean, it was a pretty aggressive bite for what was going on. Now, mind you, I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I actually need... Let's take this back. Let's take this back to the beginning. Okay? Let's take it back. So I put in, it's probably about 8:30. I'm not expecting to get a catch before noon. I'm not expecting bass to be eating anything before noon. How wrong was I? I love the sport of fishing. I love the outdoors. I love the outdoors. Because what I find out is how wrong I actually am about a lot of things. I have these ideas in my head about what the outdoors... I have these expectations, and nah. Be prepared, because you're going to be surprised. If you think that you're going to just go out in the outdoors and not be... And I mean, we're not even talking like outdoors. We're talking like a little bit outside the city outdoors sort of thing. Little bit there. But you really just kind of have to expect the unexpected. And I understand that I was wrong on a lot of occasions. And I think fishing on Sunday really clued me in to how wrong I was Saturday. How flawed my approach was Saturday. My approach was just too quick. And I thought I was going slow. I really did think I was going slow. And Sunday clued me into that. Because when I say slow, I mean so slow. I had this swim bait, and the only way I could get a bite is to... And you had to keep it... It was very, very hard to keep it into the right range of speed and action. Because you had to keep the bait moving. It had to be consistently moving. But also, you had to have as little action with it as possible. So, the swim bait, I was using a pearl laminate swim bait from Strike King. I think it's like the 3.75 inch. And it was silver flake inside of it. And the bottom side was clear. And you had to literally figure out how fast you could reel this bait in with the tail to barely move. Like, you had to have action out of the tail, but you could only have the bait barely move. And it was on an underspin. So, on the bottom, you'd hear it would have the blade not spinning. It would just be moving through the rocks. It would be just moving over the cover. But the tail would have to be barely moving. Because if it wasn't going fast enough, they wouldn't bite it. You couldn't dead stick it. But if it was going just ever so slightly too fast, they wouldn't bite it. It was moving too fast. They wouldn't commit. Because these bass are just so in tune to what the real thing is and what the real thing isn't. You have to get it into that to that perfect, happy medium. And it was a very, very hard thing to do. But I ended up catching a few. The worst part is I ended up losing my open hook swim underspin. So, and that was the only one I had. And the only other underspin I had was a owner flashy swimmer. It was a 3-aught, which those are great, and I loved using them because they're awesome around cover. But the bite was so subtle. And to really describe the bite on Saturday would be, you would feel, and I am so glad that I had this rod, because I was able to actually feel, because I was using my Dobbins Fury, and I had it paired up with a Shimano SLX. I put 20-pound braid and a 12-pound copolymer leader. And that, I had so much sensitivity in that. So much more than all the other rods I have. Because all the other rods I have, I mean, you're not talking about expensive combos here. I mean, where I would classify myself in like the skill set of fishermen and also the gear set of fishermen would be adept. Like, I am not novice because I have too much gear. I have been fishing for too long. I do understand patterns. I do understand that maybe where I'm fishing or how I'm fishing, I do understand that you have to bring a certain open-mindedness to the thing that you're doing, because if you don't, you have to be willing to accept that you're doing something wrong. And you have to be willing to understand that you're doing something wrong in order to change and adapt to what's happening. And I think that's one of the first steps from being a novice to almost like an adept fisherman. And I'm not into the advanced yet. I don't think that I can just go anywhere and catch fish. I really doubt that I could just go anywhere and catch fish. I think I could go a lot of places and catch fish, but I don't think I have the knowledge. I don't think I have the technique. I don't think I have the gear. I'm just not there yet. But what I do think is that I'm going there. I'm getting there. I'm on my way. But it takes these days. It takes the days to where you didn't catch a fish. Matter of fact, you got more questions than you did answers. Matter of fact, you didn't answer a damn thing. So now, here's what you got to do. You got to figure out how to change it up. Was it the color selection? What time of the year is it? Really just kind of pay attention to what's going on. Do you think you're going slow? Maybe you got to go slower. Maybe you got to go slower than that. Maybe you got to go slower than that. Just keep progressively slowing down in the wintertime. Because these bass are cold-blooded animals. We're used to warm-blooded animals. You can't have that same sort of mindset. So you have to have the mindset of a cold-blooded animal. The cold-blooded animal is going to tell you that the colder it gets, the less it's going to feed, the less it's going to move. It's still going to feed. Some cold-blooded animals actually go into hibernation once it gets cold enough. Flatheads will do that too, apparently, from what I understand. I heard it once, and I don't know if that's really true, but, I'm going to say it sounds cool, so why not? Why not be true? I'm just over here. I'm the Wikipedia of fucking fishing. Yeah, well, might as well. Go ahead, it's true. Someone said it once. Yeah, it's true. But, it's kind of one of those things to where when it comes down to what I'm doing right now, this winter time fishing, I think I need to get out of the mindset that I was in during the summertime. I'm just so used to power fishing. I'm just so used to just cranking and going and just reeling and just burning and just going. It's such a different type of fishing. And it takes patience. And And it really does take a lot of patience. And it takes, like, when I was, man, just thinking about how slow I was fishing that swim bait and how slow I was fishing that. And it was a particular color. I mean, I had a different color onto the swim bait too at one point. At one point, I had I think it was a magic shad, same swim bait, different color. They wouldn't touch it. Wouldn't have anything to do with it. So I think a lot of it, I mean, I did get bit on a jig, but it was a brown jig. So I kind of feel like, you know, that's going to be kind of universal anywhere you really kind of go. But I don't know. Really just thinking about it. Really just thinking about the experience that I had at Springfield Lake and how I actually had to really just take my time and focus myself on one spot and one spot alone, and how long it took me. Because I was there in the morning, and I went from morning till probably about, let's see, I got there probably around 8 o'clock. And I fished a little bit before I got to the south side of the lake where there's like bluffs and cliffs and, you know, really steep bank. So that's going to be my deepest part of the lake itself, other than actually going up into the river. Because if I actually went up into the river, there's bluff walls into the river, and it gets deep. I do think there's a lot of bass that do pull back up into that river during the wintertime. For one thing, the river doesn't freeze up, and the lake does. But I also think if a lake freezes over, that just means that the water underneath it isn't exposed to the elements over it. So that water instantly becomes calm water, I would assume. If you have an iced over lake and you have raging winds over the lake, the ice is going to protect the underneath. So the underneath side of that lake is just going to pretty much act as a calm lake. And but I've never fished it when it has frozen over, which kind of sucks, because I think I would have been able to really get some pretty decent catches off of that, or at least some decent bass, because I think they would find wherever, because I'm pretty sure where the lake, like to where the river and the lake really kind of meet, and the lake is really kind of shallow. Springfield Lake is really shallow for the most part. But once it gets to the lake part, it really comes up. And I think that's where it freezes. And I think a lot of fish pull off to there, set up there, and just chill out. But also thinking about it, there wouldn't be too much stuff falling off of there. I would just assume that water there would be the warmest. But also at the same time, why would they chill there? I don't know if they would chill there, because there's nothing going to fall off there for them in a way. But then again, it might. I've never fished it. I've never fished that sort of condition. That's just me kind of hypothesizing whether or not that would even be viable. If I were to do it, I would do it with some sort of spoon or drop shot. Probably a spoon. So that way I could just do it repeatedly and do it in a really quick succession. So I think this next upcoming weekend, I'm talking about going about out. man, just screwing up the language tonight. It is going down. So, I'm talking about going back out to Stockton. And I'm talking about actually going out there and trying to fish the same spot that I was fishing beforehand. But you know what? Really kind of thinking about it, I don't know if I should really fish there. But I don't think I gave myself a good chance. Something else I was thinking about from fishing on Sunday is I wonder if the feed times are still right around the same time. I mean, I wonder if these fish are still feeding early in the morning. But instead of feeding aggressively, they're just biting whatever comes by them and maybe going up and finding something. I think that going back out there and anchoring off and just taking my time and just really taking my time. And I mean taking my time. Like the whole day I might just spend on one spot and just really just soaking it in and just doing this one little area, this one little point, and maybe 2 points, and really just spend time on these points and really spend a lot of time and just start shallow, like start up close to the bank and just work my way out. And just what I think I want to do, because the area that I was fishing on Saturday was the same area that I was talking into the previous podcast. And that U-shaped, the first spot directly from the boat ramp, has kind of a little cut that goes back into it. Now, what I'm thinking is that before that cut, there is a transition. So there's a transition from pea gravel or like just regular gravel, whatever you want to call it, from gravel to really big chunk rock and cliff and just some big rock, basically. So I think what I want to do is spend some time soaking up that area, that transition area right there, and then move to the point. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to anchor off from that transition line, probably fairly shallow at first. During daybreak, probably fairly shallow. Not because I think that there's going to be fish there fairly shallow, but because I don't want to anchor off where I think the fish are going to be. So I'm going to anchor off at a point to where I can actually cast to them. So I'm going to probably anchor off fairly shallow and probably angle my boat to where I can just kind of fan cast that transition line. And I'm probably going to use the underspin technique that I was using beforehand this past weekend. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go buy another underspin because I lost my underspin on Sunday, which sucks, but everybody knows that's part of the fishing game. You're going to lose lures. You know what? I was very lucky. I was very, 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 very lucky that this weekend, that all that money that I spent on lures, I didn't just lose them. That I only lost one underspin. Oh yeah. That's the way to go. That's because I've had those days to where I've gone and spent like, oh, we're going to use a jerkbait. We're going to use this type. We're going to use a lipless. We're going to use a square bill. And then like you use everything and you chuck it out there and you lose it. You lose it. And you're like, oh, why? Why is this happening to me? Why did I spend so much money just to throw it in the lake? I mean, I could have just wadded up $40 and just throw it in the lake. I could have just done that. It would have been better. I think I would have had more satisfaction just just shredding pieces of $20 bills and just flicking them in the lake. Here's a piece of another 20. Here's another piece of another 20. Instead, we buy expensive lures with nice sharp hooks that like to cling on to stuff because we love it. Because we love it, and that's what we love. We love to catch the things that like to eat those things. And it is fun. It is fun, and it is exciting. And I broke in my new rod, and I am so excited to break in my new rod. I haven't set the hook really hard onto it, but I do know that it has a very decent bend to it. So when I set the hook hard, like to where if I have something that is weedless, like a soft plastic that is weedless, you really have to set the hook hard. You can't just ease into it because you have to drive the hook through the plastic and into the fish's mouth. So you really have to put a lot of force and pressure behind your hook set. But sometimes especially during wintertime, the bites are just not this is what happened when I lost that fish on the Dobbins rod. I was using, here's the thing, is I lost my underspin. So I lost the open hook underspin that I was originally using. And because of that, I had to switch to the Owner Flashy Swimmer, which is a weedless underspin hook. And so I buried it into the swim bait so that was all nice and natural looking because I kind of figured I'd just lean into them. I was like, not just lean into them. Okay. I would really set the hook. But if you've ever done any sort of fishing in wintertime, then you will understand that just setting the hook, you got to know that you have a fish on the other side of the line. Because sometimes it's really hard to tell whether or not you have a fish on the other side. Sometimes you think it's, is this a branch? Is this a rock? Is this a tire? Is this a, whatever? Because you're moving it so slow, you are bumping into things. And you're still moving it. It's not like when I got that jig bite. When you get a jig bite and you feel a jig bite, you know it's a bite. Because either you moved it and the rod not just loaded up, but started ripping out of your hands. Like that's an aggressive jig bite. Or what's most common is you move the jig, and as soon as you move it, you feel a little tick or a thump. Just something small, just this little pop, but it's from you not moving it. So you know that it's not the bottom. It's not something that you just came in contact with because you're moving it along the bottom. If you're moving this thing along the bottom and all of a sudden you feel the bottom again, that's not the bottom, that's a fish. Set the hook. And that actually brings me to my second point, is I didn't have my drag set properly on my jig rod. I had it a little bit too light. And the drag slipped out. I didn't get a good hook set. I tried getting in front of the fish, and I couldn't get in front of the fish because I didn't have a fast enough reel combination. If I could get in front of the fish, I could have set the hook again. But the problem was I couldn't get in front of him. I had enough pressure. I could reel fast enough just to keep up with him. He was coming towards me. So I set the hook. He was coming towards me. I was reeling, and he got off. I mean, that's what happens. When your gear's not necessarily adequately tuned, you'll lose fish. So you do have to make sure that you do have the right amount of drag set onto your reel. And that's a good lesson to really understand, to have the proper amount of drag. My drag was a little too loose, and that's a good thing, because now I know I need to tighten it down just a little bit more. Because if I tighten it down, but I don't want it too tight, because I have that leader on there. I don't want that leader just busting off. So I'm going to have that drag just a little bit, just a little bit. Let it move a little bit. But that leader on there is going to act like, but I usually use a mono leader on that. If I'm going to have a jig on there, something to where I'm going to set the hook, I want a mono leader. I don't want a copolymer or a fluorocarbon. Just because of the fact that stretch. I want the stretch. The weight of the jig is going to hold it down. So I'm not worried about it making the depth. So what I'm really worried about it is it being seen, because I'm fishing clear water. And I mean, at least the water in Springfield Lake is fairly clear. I mean, we're talking 4 or 5 foot of visibility. Probably less. I mean, well, yeah, I would say it's probably like 5 foot of visibility. Less than 5 foot of visibility. More than 3, less than 5. I'm not good at judging these things. Like I said, not a master. Still, at the same time, what I recognize is these fish were still eating at the appropriate times. And I thought that they would switch. I thought they would switch to the more of an afternoon pattern. Like, they would switch to where the hottest part of the day that they would probably feed the most. And that's my thinking of it. That the warmest time they're going to feed the most. But no, they still feed at the twilight and the twilight hours. They still feed then. They may not move as far. They may not be as active, but they will still feed. The thing is you still have to get out there at those times. So this next weekend coming up, I'm probably going to go out Sunday. I'll probably go out Sunday morning, because I got things to do Saturday. But I will go out Sunday morning, and I will probably only fish like a point or two. Like, I may fish the same area that I fished last Saturday, but with more time. I think I will devote a whole day to that one small section. And I think I really need to do that. I think I really need to slow down and just make sure that I take my time on those 2 spots and not move at all. Because I did find fish there. And I actually think that maybe going to the next spot over on the bluff wall, the spot that's west downstream, I think going there and also setting up shop and just slow rolling those points again, and just making sure I really slow down, take my time, soak my baits, and really just try to figure out the pattern. Really just try to key in on what they're trying to eat, and what they will bite and what they won't bite. And with it being winter, they're not going to move. They're going to stay put. So I don't think I have to like run around the lake and really find these fish. I think taking my time and figuring out what's going on here. And if I spend a day and they don't bite at all, well, then that's more information. That's more information. And actually, that may just answer a couple of questions. Those might not be bass. And that's something that may come up, is those might not be bass. Those schools might not be bass. They could be catfish. They could be carp. They might not be bass. And if they're not bass, then, I'm not using the right technique to catch them. If they're carp, well, I'm not using carp bait. I'm not using catfish bait. I'm using bass bait. Now, that's not saying that I can't catch catfish on bass lures. I've caught catfish on bass lures. Matter of fact, I thought this last summer, I caught a 6-pound channel cat in probably about a foot of water. No joke. And it was tucked up into some grass. And I was coming along, and this thing just came out and just killed the bait. And when I say killed it, it basically set the hook for me. I didn't really have to set the hook. I thought when I set the hook into it, I thought here we go. This is going to be an actual Wade PB. An actual Wade PB. Because I kind of feel like the PB that I have now is kind of a PB with an asterisk. I didn't weigh it. So there's no real weight onto it. This is just a estimated weight. So I have an estimated weight of 8 pounds. But it is the biggest bass I've ever caught was that quote unquote 8-pound bass, the asterisk 8-pound bass. But when this channel cat hit this bait, I thought and especially when it was fighting, I thought this is going to be a PB. This is going to be a bat. This is a bass of, here we go. Here's another bass of a lifetime. And I think anything over 6 pounds is a bass of a lifetime. 6 pounds is, and you know what? If you're a northern guy, 5 pounds and up may be a bass of a lifetime. If you catch a bass over 5 pounds, that's a bass of a lifetime for some of you guys. But I think where I'm sitting at, in the lakes that I'm fishing, anything that's 6 and up is a bass of a lifetime. And that's what I thought when this thing hooked in. And I pulled it in. And I saw it was a catfish, and I thought, well, I didn't expect that. It was still a really fun fight. I had it was hard. It was a hard fight because I had light line, and he was pulling out a little bit of drag, but I managed to get him in, and I also managed to get a weight onto him, and he was 6 pounds, but I didn't want to touch him. And not because he was a catfish, but because he had just clusters. And when I mean clusters, I mean there were whole colonies of parasites that were on the head of this thing when he first came up. And that's the first thing I noticed onto this catfish. It was just, it was nasty. I put a glove on. No, I didn't have a glove. I actually went and bought gloves afterwards. It was so bad. They were all over this catfish. I didn't want to touch it. I released it off of the weight, off of the scale. Maybe I shouldn't have done it like that, but, it had pustules on the bottom of its belly that had worms that were inside the pustules, just squirming around inside the pustules. It was so nasty. Nature is just so ruthless. It was just so nasty. And you don't think about things like that. You think, oh, this only happens to creatures in lakes next to cities. No, this happens in this happens in a lot of places. This is not the first time I've seen parasites onto a fish. This is not the first time. I've seen them everywhere. I've seen them a lot of places. But no, well, so back to the point is this weekend when I fish Stockton, I really want to take my time. And I think that's going to be the key. I think the key is to just slow down. And just slow down and just allow myself to just relax. And just relax. And just be patient. And understand that the fish aren't necessarily going to bite off of reaction. Now, I do have a reaction tactic. I have some deep diving crankbaits, which I've heard that they'll work. I don't know if they will, but I've heard that they will. We'll see. Some tight wobble, deep diving crankbaits. We'll see. They may not. That's just something that I'm going to have to find out. And that's going to have to happen this upcoming weekend. And I think most likely what's going to happen is I'm going to take out my A-rig. I do have an A-rig. And I'm going to take that out and fish with it. And try to really slow roll that across the points. That with my underspin. And I'm probably going to have to go buy another open hook underspin. I'll probably buy 2 of them just in case if I lose one. But yeah, I think that's going to be the game plan. I think the game plan is just to slow roll an A-rig or maybe a underspin over these points. But probably what I'm going to do is just anchor off and drop shot and jig over these points. And just to see what happens. Maybe I can find some birds and see if they're keyed on something. Maybe I might just try some vertical, jigging, some vertical spooning, that sort of thing. We'll see. I'm going to find out. And when I find out, you're going to find out. So, all right, that's all I got for you today. And you guys have a great